Good morning. My name is Andrea Masucci. I'm the Director of Retirement Plan Services for Hamilton Capital Management, and I'm also the chairman of the committee that's the mentoring committee for Women in Pensions Network. So we are so thrilled that you are here with us today. We are going to broach the topic of Fearless You, a year of courageous conversations. We're very excited that you joined us. We have an amazing speaker lined up today. Her name is Dr. Melissa Briggs Phillips, and her topic is Take It On, Do You Have Grit? So as we get into our conversation today, I want to let you know that we've had over 150 people that have registered for this event. And this is a members-only event, so thank you so much for your support. But I want you to take a moment for yourself. We're here for professional development. So many of us just rushed from another meeting, or we may be traveling and en route, or waiting for our next meeting to start. So let's just take 2 seconds for ourselves at the beginning of this conversation to thank yourself. I really want you to kind of center in and thank yourself for doing this for you, for your organization, for your betterment. You're going to learn quite a bit today. I'm so excited for the topics that we have in store, but just really take a breath and be grateful that you are here today. And we're grateful so much that you're part of our organization, and we're looking to add value to you so that you can give back to those around you, whether in your organization or in your personal life. So with that, just some housekeeping rules. All callers have been muted. If you are online, there is a chat. So if you have a question, you may send that through the chat or raise your hand, and I'll pay attention to those as we go through the webinar. And we'll have a question session at the end, so we'll be sure to do that. But if you do have a question, you can put that in the chat room. And also the question that I started in the chat room, as you can see if you are online, you'll see that we wanted to see if you would share with us the topic of one courageous conversation that you've had recently in the past, if you'd like to share that. So that all callers or all panelists can see the chat, all attendees can see that chat, so we wanted you to be aware of that. But otherwise, at the end, if you have a question, you'll have to unmute yourself. There's a button that says unmute, so I will unmute everybody and we'll be able to chat then. So let me get into our presentation. I know you can see my screen. I want to tell you a little bit about Women in Pensions and who we are. We are organized to promote professional development of women, and we do that in many ways. The organization is a network of more than 1,800 women, so you're really in good company here. We range from early career to mid-career and senior level, so it's a wealth of experience and knowledge that we're surrounded by. We're part of the ecosphere of retirement plans in this industry, which are record keepers, TPAs, DCIOs, broker-dealers, RIAs, and ERISA attorneys, not to mention our advisors and our consultants that make up our organization. So we span a broad range of an audience. So why would you want to be a member of Women in Pensions organization? Well, we're an independent organization. We're not run by any corporate organization. We are independent. We drive agenda and initiatives for our sponsors, and we use their input and insight from them as well as our members. We're a networking, sharing, and support organization as our primary goal. We've actually grown in 2017, which we're very proud of, from 5 to 13 regional chapters. So I wanted to take a moment to give shout out to all those chapters and their locations. If you are on the call and you're near one of these locations and you didn't realize there was a chapter, please visit our website so that you can see what their organization next steps would be, what meetings they have coming up, and some fun events that they do. There's one in North California, Southern California, Chicago, New York City, Boston, Cleveland, Nashville, Kansas City, Seattle, Tampa and St. Pete, Hartford, Charlotte, and upstate New York and New Jersey. So amazing growth. So thank you, ladies, who have stepped up to chair a regional chapter. If you don't have a regional chapter near you and you're wanting more information about that, we can help you get started with that. We are also doing events at conferences, so 4 different conferences a year that we are supporting and having events so that you will be able to connect with us there. And if you're not at any of those events, let's say you're on an internal desk or you're just getting started, then you can follow us on LinkedIn, and we'd be more than happy to have your input there and also to receive the things that we're sharing to you there. So this brings us to our topic for this year. Now, this is very near and dear to my heart. I was very upfront in developing this agenda with the input from many of our amazing members on our board, and we decided to call it Fearless You, a year of courageous conversations. So don't you just love the way that makes you feel when you hear that? So we're going to have 4 parts to the series this year. So we want you to see what the 4 parts are so that you can join us. Come back in July for our next one. We'll tell you what that one will be at the end of this one. And we want you to hold the date. But there are 4 topics we're really discussing this year. Take it on, creating workplace culture, thrive on challenge, and gratitude. So along with me, I have committee members. I have Allie Caffrey, who's at InvestNet, and Nikki Morley, who's at CUNA. So a shout out to them for their efforts and their work on the committee. So that's the topic for this year, Fearless You, a year of courageous conversations. Now, why did we choose that? Well, we're going to show you this slide. One of the biggest things that's happening in the world and in the industry right now with so much momentum is that it's all pointing in the same direction, and research is pointing in the same direction of gender diversity in leadership roles. So currently, only 6% of Fortune 500 CEOs are women. That's astounding. What we found was that Rockefeller Foundation commissioned a study for the CEO Pipeline Project. It's called 100 times 25, and it's going to elevate the position of women in leadership, especially corporate boards, to attain leading Fortune 500 companies by the year of 2025. Women should be at least in 20% of those roles. So the project was started because of a research project that they commissioned from the Korn Ferry Institute. Now, Korn Ferry studied women CEOs, and they called this study Women CEOs Speak. I highly encourage you to take a look at it. It is online. There's a link in this presentation if you miss it. They analyzed the 57 current and past CEOs from Fortune 500 companies, and they wanted to identify what qualities that drove them to be high-performing women, good leaders. How did they get to where they're at? This was a psychometric assessment that they performed. So we took that study and we popped it into our presentation for you for the 2018 Fearless You, a year of courageous conversations. And that's what we're going to be discussing, is what they found in this research and how it would enable you to use some of these practical traits and characteristics that these other women leaders have, and was found out by the psychometric assessment. Another interesting topic is the 2020 Women on Boards. I want to bring your attention to the initiative by this Women on Boards organization. There's an article in the 401k Specialist magazine that was just released last week. I'm going to read just a few statements from it. It was written by Mary Lou Wattman, who is on our board as well as having her own firm called 1920 West, and she's a partner at 3 Ethos. So she's on the Women in Pensions Network, and the topic was proxy votes for corporate directors will be influenced by women. And basically what it's saying is the companies that are hoping to attract and retain large institutional investors should be paying attention to this growing area of scrutiny, that of their board's gender composition. So 2020 Women on Boards, you can go to their website. It's a national campaign that is to increase the percentage of women on U.S. company boards by 20% or greater by the year 2020. So a large amount of momentum, a large amount of research is going into this feeling that women are better. We're improving bottom dollar profits. And this is also supported by even some of those large institutional investors. There was a recent announcement by BlackRock that stipulated that they would be paying attention to those proxy votes and the New York State Common Retirement Fund as well. So there's some research and backing to how we're building our topic this year. I want to get into this study just a little bit further by the Korn Ferry Institute about building high potential women. So we're going to uncover through this series some common traits, drivers, and competencies that really look very similar to our male counterparts, but there is a subtle difference. And that subtle difference can be extremely meaningful, not only for your professional life and career, but for the organizations that we serve. So that's the framework for our 2018 Connect webinar series. Those key traits that were identified were courage, risk-taking, resilience, challenge, and managing ambiguity. So they want us to pay attention to understand how to develop those traits and take on tough and unpredictable job assignments or challenges. And that will build our leadership skills. That's one of the research items that was found in this study. So in order to do that, we have brought to you one of amazing speaker that we have worked with in the past, Dr. Melissa Briggs Phillips. Just for a brief interview of her, or I'm sorry, an overview of her. She's the owner and founder of Next Generational Behavioral Health. She's a ruthless optimist. I've had the privilege of hearing her speak in person several times. She really is very innovative. And she believes that innovation happens at the intersection of divergent disciplines, and that great outcomes for executives result from integrating best practices from various fields. And she's done that in her personal and professional life. She's worked with trauma survivors for over 20 years, and she's integrated some of these lessons into what she calls grit: gratitude, resilience, intention, and toughness. So Dr. Melissa, we are waiting to hear from you. Let me flip over my screen, and I'll stop sharing my screen and begin yours. And if you can, I've unmuted you. Good morning, Dr. Melissa. Are you there? Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can. Hold on just 1 second. Okay, I've asked you to start your video. That way we'll be able to see you.
Can you hear me okay?
I did. Good morning.
Okay, good.
Great. So thank you for joining us today. We're very excited to hear about your topic of grit and how it plays into some of the major themes that we're seeing in our industry. And we can't wait to hear what you have to say.
I'm excited too. Now, can you see my slides yet?
No, I don't. If you
Okay.
hit the share screen button at the bottom, you'll be able to.
All right, let's see here. Can you see me now?
I see your screen. There we go. Very good.
Can you see me?
I can see you.
Okay, all right, good. Well, thanks for having me. I'm really excited to have the opportunity to share some of these ideas with everybody. Now, I'm used to having quite a bit of time, so buckle your seatbelts. We are going to power through some of these concepts. And as Andrea was talking, I was thinking in my head of things I wanted to integrate or say or take out. So I like it to be meaningful and personal. So I have some ideas based on some of which she started with today. So I believe this, and I have been noodling this since I taught my first graduate level class in like 1999. And this is going to be kind of a challenge with you out in the ethos and me in here. So usually what I like to do is ask a few flash polls where we can all get a sense of shared experiences in the room. We can't do that, obviously. So I will share some personal things about me, and I will ask you questions, and I want you to pretend that I'm actually sitting with you over a pint or a cup of coffee and that I actually want to hear the answer. It kind of fires some neurons in there and gets you thinking about how you might engage with the topics we're going to go through today. So as Andrea mentioned, I've done trauma work for a long time. So when I was 19, I worked in the Assistant District Attorney's Office in the Family Violence Sexual Assault Unit. And that tracked me. I was going to go to law school to try and get bad guys, but I decided that I wanted to be a part of the resolution and the healing and the recovery. And so I switched and ended up pursuing a PhD, ultimately in clinical psychology. And I've been working with survivors for 25 years at this point. And while my career path has been circuitous, I kind of left full-time clinical work and managed projects and did higher education administration and consulting and some other things. I've done this on the side for a very long time. And over the years, I realized that there were things I could extract from my experiences with survivors, as well as leading teams and managing budgets and hiring and firing. And over the years, this very organic thing started to happen. So if you look at my little chart here, you can see sort of that olivey green color. Let's assume that's baseline. And let's assume that middle bar is what happens after a significantly traumatic event happens. And then blue is, okay, this is what you can return to. And I began to observe, after tens of thousands of hours leading people and working clinically, there are things that are shared amongst thrivers. And I thought, well, if you could take those things and teach them, if they were skill sets in some way to folks who hadn't necessarily experienced trauma and the setback, what could possibly happen? And so it's been this organic process, a combination of me doing this with different teams when I've been invited in, speaking on this, hearing people share their experience, doing it in my own life, and recently starting to integrate this with adolescent athletes as well. So that's another topic. So what I call it is grit training. And there isn't anything magical about this. It is that it is an on-trend term, and we hear it out there a lot, and I kind of like what it means. And I broke it out into 4 different components. Now, when I work with teams, I can go in, and typically what happens is we'll do gratitude for a quarter, and then resilience, and then it's like a year-long thing. But today, like I said, we're going to power through a lot of these constructs quickly. And my goal is that you leave with something to do different. And you will gather by the time I'm done presenting my thoughts to you that behavior is something that's a big deal for me. So let's get started. Now, no one has ever said no to this question when I pose it. And the funny thing is, we do a lot of things that are expensive and time consuming to get access to more of these things. And what if I was to tell you that something that was free and accessible to you with just a few habits could have an impact on those things? And I'm not talking about your grandmother's, pastel-colored thank you notes. I'm not talking about couth. I'm not talking about manners. This is how I define gratitude. An affirmation that there is goodness, and an affirmation that this goodness exists outside of you and concurrently to whatever's going on. So let me explain that a little further. I essentially think that gratitude is a very polite way of getting over yourself and not putting yourself at the center of the solar system when stuff's not going your way. And the reason that that can be profound is that it changes your neurons. So you'll see there on your screen, I hope, these very close-up pictures of dendrites, the end of neurons. And in between those things are these luscious neurotransmitters called serotonin and dopamine. And we do all kinds of things to elevate those levels, some healthy, some not so healthy. And the humbling thing is we are all vulnerable to those things. The dopamine and serotonin, they dictate our entire quality of life. All of us, this invisible thing we can't see. So if you are going to do things to alter the way those levels function in your brain, well, gratitude and actively practicing it can help you rewire this. And there's a new term called neuroplasticity, which you've probably heard before. It's like when you do things repeatedly, you actually lay down like train tracks in your brain, and those paths that we trod frequently become almost encoded or hardwired. Now, we are built to remember when bad things happen. that's evolutionarily, biologically advantageous for us. So if you, a few hundred generations of humans ago went out of your cave and someone ate a yellow coneflower and then died, it was a good thing if you remembered that bad thing, because then you would avoid it. The problem is technology and the way that our world is built right now. It's accelerating at a rate at which our brains aren't really catching up, which is actually a whole other webinar. But that point is important because gratitude slows you down a little bit and helps you mitigate when your brain is hyper-focusing on what didn't happen or what's bad. So there are myths about what gratitude is and is not, and we don't have time to go through all of these, but I will share one summary of a clinical study to you. So out of the Greater Good, a center out at Berkeley in California, they put people into groups and they had folks accomplishing a goal, whether it was saving, financial goals, weight loss, whatever it may be. And they had one group do a gratitude journal and one group not. That was the only independent variable they manipulated. And they've shown pretty consistently over time that folks who are being mindful of what they appreciate met the goals faster, maintained the results over time, and took more ownership of what they were accomplishing. So if we are willing to do all kinds of things in order to feel better and meet our goals, if there is just something tiny we can do that helps that stick, why not? So I suppose that's why gratitude, and I heard Andrea say it's going to be actually a whole section that you do later. If we know that, then why not have that be sort of the ground zero foundational principle? So we spend a lot of mental real estate on unimportant things. So I don't know about you guys, but have you ever spent a whole evening, maybe a couple days, ruminating about somebody that like pissed you off in a meeting, or somebody that politically was maneuvering around you, or maybe even just got in a little poison tip dart in front of your boss to kind of like cut you at the knees? Have you ever ruminated about one of those situations and drafted like long comeback emails? And okay. So most people can relate to that. And if you are fortunate enough to have a long enough career, you will eventually have so many of those experiences, you will forget who those people are. I know many years ago I had this vacation. We were on an island somewhere. It was lovely, but there was this stuff going on at work and I couldn't quite unhook from it. And I remember missing out on what was in front of me, but I don't remember the names of the people that had my khakis so chapped. I bet you can relate to that. I know somebody can. So one of the ways that you can help to balance that is to make an effort to thank the right people. Make sure you're giving your mental real estate away to the people who've earned the right to get it. And there's an action item connected to this later. It sounds like there's probably folks that are in really diverse work environments. So it's kind of tough to actually get into the specifics of this unless I know your culture. So I'll just say this. People appreciate being appreciated. I have never, ever had anyone sit in my office. I have never worked with a team and had anyone say, I am just appreciated too much. They need to stop. That's never happened ever. So be thoughtful thinkers. Be specific when you give feedback. Don't be lazy thinkers. If you are going to demonstrate appreciation either to your clients, your customer base, coworkers, a boss, the team that works for you, the person that is cleaning your office space in the evening, don't be a lazy thinker. Be very specific. And research has shown that specific appreciations get you more mileage. And I like this quote, the psychological immune system for turbulence of the future. I kind of like that. Gratitude can work like that in the workplace. Now, I always like to tell executive women this: if someone is going to either give you a compliment or tell you thank you, then accept it as if you've been presented a gift. So these two pictures here, the one on the right is an old picture from an office. I actually, behind me, have a bin full of thank you notes. I keep them and I cherish them, because if someone took the time to do it, I hold on to that. And those Corona boxes are full of cards and thank you notes in a home office. That's an older picture too. That's from a while ago. But I take this seriously. So the next time someone gives you a compliment, here's a good way to practice. I want you to accept it. I don't know if I'm in the screen here with my hands. Accept it, receive it, appreciate it, say thanks, and insert a period. No throwaway comment where you diminish what you've done. Accept the gratitude. Say you're welcome. Accept the compliment, and challenge a woman. We have to do this together. If you give a compliment or you express gratitude and there's like some sort of like diminishing, self-deprecating comment, then call her on it. Say, no, you just accept that. So if we train each other to do it, and I've seen that happen in cultures, it makes a difference. So here's your action items around gratitude, okay? I want you to think about how you appreciate and demonstrate, how you demonstrate appreciation. I want you to think about how you receive it. Think about mechanisms that you use in your workplace and how you might tell the story of gratitude. Here's some things to do in your personal life. Do a 7-day documentation of appreciation. So for 7 days, somebody in your life that is important to you, write down the time and the date and something you appreciate that they did. Sometimes it can be, thank you for emptying the dishwasher. Sometimes it can be something grander. Thank you for helping me financially with this. Whatever occurs to you. And then give it to that person. Sorry, my technology here. Give it to the person on the 8th day. Keep a 1-sentence gratitude journal for 21 days. 99-cent notebook from Walgreens. 21 days, write 1 sentence, something that you are grateful for that day. Write a letter, old school style, to somebody that you appreciate. It feels really good. Be specific and intentional the next time in a meeting when there's somebody that you really do appreciate what they did. Make sure you say it. Take the risk. Be vulnerable. Say it out loud. So these are some action items. Now, this is not about, and I want to tell you that there was a little example this morning. So I have a water leak in my house and we haven't been able to find it. It's been a few weeks of not being able to find it. Service providers out, whatnot. Well, anyway, this morning, someone from the city, it really wasn't his job, came out and spent some time and found it, which was great. And I really appreciated it. Now, am I really angry that the other people didn't find it, that I paid? Am I really frustrated and upset that I have a lake in the crawl space in my house? Yes. But I took the time and I called the city water department and left a long message of gratitude and appreciation for Eric that came out to my house, and it was professional and competent and didn't make me feel stupid because you could see it if we had just looked up over the wall. So that's an example of how you put it into practice in little moments throughout your day. If you pay attention, you will find an opportunity. So resiliency. Now that picture on the left is a picture of New Orleans. So I don't know if anybody's from New Orleans. The impact of Katrina and how when you go back, it's been years, but when you go back, people still talk about it and this sense of we got through this together. So resiliency can be community. And when you're going through something, whether it's a merger, an acquisition, a buyout, a downsizing, a round of layoffs, like when you're in a work environment, you're tackling a project that's requiring extra hours for people. There's a sense of we're in the bunker together, that can go a long way. Resilience can also be an individual thing. So this is how I define resiliency: the willingness and the capacity to behave forward. So the picture there kind of captures it. Like, we can become rear view mirror obsessed, that the stuff that's in the past is the only thing taking up our field of vision, and you're going to rear end somebody if that's how you navigate life. So the way I define resiliency, it's this very specific thing of behaving forward. Thus the domain name that I bought, which is sort of complicated and not the most user-friendly thing in the world. I'm always spelling it, now B-E-H-A-V-E. But I believe in this construct. I really do. So the problem is there are a lot of cultural mythologies, and I call them cognitive hamster wheels, that get in the way. Now, we don't have time to go through all of them, but I want to share a couple of them. So that last one there, the fundamental attribution error. How many of you have ever been driving somewhere and someone cuts you off, and within a millisecond, you have that person pegged? You know who they are. You've made decisions about their worth as a human. You have decided what kind of character they have. You've had a millisecond interaction, and you've made a lot of assumptions. And you've escalated your entire parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous system in anger and response. So what if the next time that happens, you wish that person well and tell them, well, I hope that they stay safe, and when they get there, everything's okay. Now, sometimes that person is maybe, hungover and rushing to work. But I can assure you that there are plenty of stories, given the work that I do, where that person is trying to get somewhere before someone dies, where they are panicked and worried about a child. So fundamental attribution error is when you make massive assumptions based on limited interactions. And we kind of do this all the time. Like, it's a cognitive cheat. Like, we do this. It's been evolutionarily advantageous to extrapolate from small interactions, but it can really work against us. The one I want to talk about with you guys is the hard work equals reward. And so I threw these little data points in here because I like these studies, and I think they're going to be relevant for the mission of your organization. It's something I talk about quite a bit. When you look at how behaviors, so these are behaviors, observable behaviors, how men and women are rated, it is a stunning thing that women are rated as having these competencies at a higher rate than men, pretty consistently. When you break down the attributes that leaders have into component parts, women are rated high. Okay, so that's an interesting data point. Then you look at this. Okay, so something is happening. Something is happening. Now, it is beyond the scope of our time together today to talk about the system barriers, and there are system barriers. There are biases, implicit and manifest. One of my favorite things to talk about are the emotional display rules that are afforded men versus women. And it kind of goes back to that fundamental attribution error, that if there is something that happens that is, let's say, something that doesn't go really well on a project, we are more likely to attribute that, if it's a failure, to an innate lack of competency in a woman, but we're more likely to attribute that to a system issue for a man. So that's one example of system things that happen. But today I want to talk to you about internal barriers that get in the way. And this is the one I want to talk about. I can't tell you how many times I sit with high potentials in organizations, and they talk about when the meritocracy ends and the politics begin, when authenticity and work ethic are no longer, the main issues driving the promotion, when it's politics, when it's being strategic. Women feel like they've got to go home and take a shower at the end of the day. They feel like they're being dishonest. They feel like they're being fake. And it is this real dance. And it's this internal itch that happens when authentic and strategic are butting up against each other. And I believe that it's a mindset that you can work through, and with the right language and the right way of framing what's going on, you can label it and work through it. And I believe that this is a barrier for resiliency for women within organizations. Now, there are all kinds of systemic things. We know that. But today, I just want to mention this one. So put that little nugget in your head. Okay, right now in this moment, do I need to be strategic? Am I feeling itchy because I have to be strategic? An example may be when you are making a sale. And I have this mentioned a lot. Like, so women who are trying to break into the upper ranks within technology, and let's say software companies or any kind of technology company that's offering a solution for a business. And I've heard this dozens of times where a male counterpart will tell a customer, oh yeah, we can do that. And the woman is sitting there going, oh my God, we don't have the infrastructure for that yet. So that's one of those examples where there's a sense of, okay, well, we'll build it when we come back, or I'll backpedal later. And a woman is much more likely to go, okay, well, we don't have that, so I can't say we have that because that's a lie. That's not being authentic. That's not being honest. This is a very gendered thing that tends to happen. So I hope that helps explain it a little bit. And I'm sure in your own world you can think of something, because most people can. So how do you get around this? One of the cognitive resets is this. Most problems are actually irritations and inconveniences. So if you can put that in your head, well, that's annoying or that's frustrating, then you kind of create, you can discern, you can create differentiation between things always being a fire drill. And we know what this is like when you work with someone where their hair is on fire constantly, it's always a problem. Then you can't offer like a specific response if everything is a problem. So most problems usually are temporary. They're not forever. They're local, meaning they're here. They're localized. They're not pervasive to the entire organization. And they're changeable. There's something. You may not like what you have to change, but it's changeable. So one of the things that you can put as a visual is you are at one point on the arc. And if we had more time, I have some anecdotes around this. We don't this morning, but I like this because it's mathematical and this image pops into my head, especially if I'm navigating a failure experience. My mentor of mine from many, many years ago when I had a failure experience said, you are at one point on the arc. This is one blip on the radar. And the idea of like shrinking the failure to being one point, not the whole story, helps you take risks, which is something that Andrea was talking about. So I want to talk about another thing you can do to build resiliency. And number 4 here, they have multiple identities. I mean, one of my least favorite phrases in the world is work-life balance. And I am so thankful for our HR professionals who have like at least made, public employment folks think about the fact that we're human beings outside of when we are not at work. But that work-life balance, I don't like it because everybody feels like it's something that they should be working toward, and pretty much everybody feels like they're failing at it. And so I like to frame it in a very different way. Build a proportional identity portfolio. Okay, so when I whip out my Oppenheimer fund and I'm looking at where I'm invested because of my age and whatnot, my person is telling me like, okay, here's how we're going to slice that pie up in a diverse portfolio. If you go all in on one thing, that's not a great idea unless that's your like risk pool money, whatever. You guys know a lot more about that than me. So I think that your life deserves just as much thoughtfulness. So if you were to draw a pie chart and chunk up your life, so what's on that pie chart? Is your pie chart proportional? You are more likely to take a risk in your professional life if the other chunks of that pie chart are meaningful to you and satisfying to you. So you're willing to say, all right, well, I might screw this up, but I'm a pet parent and I love my doggies, or I'm an auntie, or I'm a parent, I'm a daughter, I'm a volunteer, I'm a rock wall climber, I'm a rower, I am a global citizen, I'm politically, fill it out. And you are more likely to go, well, I can screw that up. I can take a little risk because I'm balanced. It's balanced with the other pieces in your identity portfolio. So why don't you do that for yourself? given the time, I think I will probably only share this last one here, movie making. So this is the way I describe anxiety. Anxiety is when you have made an apocalyptic, catastrophic movie in your head about how things are going to play out, and you work yourself up into a real physiological experience based on fiction. Okay, that's anxiety. And really smart people who have jobs where they have to see around corners struggle with anxiety because of this. Like, your brain gets in the habit of looking for the, saber-toothed tiger around the corner. Okay, adaptive, many generations of humans ago, adaptive in your professional life in many ways, but it can morph into generalized anxiety where you live in this state of fear, and it's based on movie making. So if you are at all struggling with this, let's say you're taking on a challenging new product and you're laying in bed at night and you've concocted this whole scenario where it's going to be a disaster. Well, you're making a movie, and so interrupt it. Tell yourself no movie making. It can be a nice little way of unhooking from a cognitive habit that you have, because it gets in the way of resiliency. So intentions. Let's talk about intentions. This was my first business, I guess, and my mom found this a few years ago, and I just cracked up. So in Ohio, I don't know where everybody is, in Ohio we had stores up in the Cleveland area called Gold Circle, and I remember cutting these out of the Gold Circle circular and photocopying this and putting it all over the bulletin boards that were inside the grocery store, like entryways, if you remember those, children of the 70s and 80s. So if you can see there, I put reasons. I love little kids. I'm saving money for a fish aquarium and a stereo. Apparently, this knowing your why and stating it clearly has been a thing for me for a long time. I believe in the power of setting intentions. I believe intentions are more powerful than goals, and I'll explain why I mean that. So when you are thinking about your daily life, I want you to be thinking about why you work. Why do you work? I think Andrea was there. I was giving a talk to early career professionals, maybe 50 or 60 early career professionals recently. And so folks like in the workforce 5 years or less. And when I asked this question, nobody said money. I was stunned. I had never had that happening before. It was all this like meaning making and how I feel and contribution to the world. And, when I said, well, how about money? They did eventually say, oh yeah, that too. But I thought that was a very interesting thing that the like 25 and under set didn't even say money out loud. So if you're managing folks, just as a sidebar, making meaning, connecting the thing that you're doing to something meaningful is absolutely critical. They want the why. They want the why, and the why has to be meaningful and substantive. And I don't think that's bad. I think that that's a advantageous thing. So for you, think about why you work. So I want you to think about how you feel about your work and rate it 1 to 10. Got your number? Okay. Now I want you to do this. I want you to look at these things and rate them. So my guess is that you had some different numbers. And what we tend to do is get attached to the low numbers and ignore the higher numbers. We try to make our work lives one thing, and they're not. Our work lives are full of diverse experiences. So take this list. The next time you're looking at this and you're thinking that's a low number, make sure you're telling the whole story. Take a look at everything that you do and allow yourself some time to consider the higher numbers. Work is not one thing. It's all these things. And why we work depends on this list of resources. Okay, so these are 24 things that are considered human resources. I pulled these from some research on these constructs, and so these are resources that people have in their life. And some of these resources you get from your work life. Some of them you don't. And so the work that you do during the day can't be, I would argue, the only place where you get all of these things. So if we are going to take risks if we are going to take on challenging projects, if we're going to fail, if we're going to sacrifice likability in a quest for competence, which is another sidebar conversation that I think is worth having, that for men, you can be unlikable and competent. For women, that is a narrow lane. You got to be competent, but we really want you to be likable too. If you have other resources here on this list, that you are getting those resources from places outside of your work. Remember that diverse identity portfolio? This is another way of looking at it. Resources, you're more willing to say, okay, I'm going to let these 4 people hate my guts right now because it's the competent right thing to do, and I'm not going to ruminate about it. I'm going to tolerate it because I have these resources being met in my life elsewhere. Adequately challenged and appropriately resourced. This is the sweet spot. So instead of thinking about like time management, which is another phrase that I hate, because time, you can't manage time. You set boundaries and you transition from tasks. Behavioral scientists are really obsessive about operational definitions, if you haven't picked up on that. So I like this. Adequately challenged and appropriately resourced. So if people are challenged too much and they don't have the resources, then that has an impact. If folks are under-challenged, like if you're underemployed, the number of people that seek therapy for somebody like me I work with professionals, they think they have anxiety, but they are under-challenged at their workplace and they have the brain of a racehorse. And so what else are they going to do except ruminate and fill in things to chomp on psychologically, mentally, emotionally, if they are working something that is under challenging them, that is under tapping into the resources that they have. So for what it's worth, I like this way of thinking about your team, your job, and the workplace. So what the heck is an intention? It is a clear, specific, and positive statement of an outcome you want to experience. It actually influences what you do because you line up your behaviors with your intention. Is this behavior in alignment with my intention? No, then don't do it. Is this behavior in alignment with my intention? Yes, then I do it. It is less about the outcome. It's more about this set of behaviors is something I can control. So for women trying to get to that C-suite or as a managing partner or as a director, this idea of, okay, what can you control and what you can't? You can control your intentions. Navigating relationships that are complicated in your family. I mean, I think that we all have had challenging, painful times. And one of the things that I try to teach people and practice in my own life is, okay, especially if you're dealing with somebody with addiction, for example, and you're struggling with, enabling or being codependent, sometimes love is no. And intentions are more powerful than goals. And you can communicate that by saying, my intention is to be a good sister. It makes me sad that you don't experience me that way, period. You unhook from what comes next. That's something you can control. If your intention is to be X, Y, or Z, and you're lining up your behavior and it's coherent for you, what someone else does with it is really not something you can control. And I think that I'd love to have more time to chat about that too and hear your stories, but I can't right now. One of the ways that you get better at setting intentions is to be good at inquiry. And I want to talk about my last point here about toxic questions. So passive-aggressive communication is when things are out of alignment. So do not ever ask a question when you're really making a statement. Make a statement. Now, there are reasons why women are more vulnerable to this communication style than men, because they can be punished when they are too direct. That happens. Remember those, okay, if a man does it, so the packaging of a man, the packaging of a woman. I mean, there have been study after study after study that have demonstrated how people perceive the behavior depending on if they think a man or a woman does it. So there are reasons that women have, I think, in a very smart, savvy way, actually. Learned how to make requests in form of questions because it implies a softer, more gentle, passive way that is more socially acceptable. So forgive yourself if you do this, okay? But we've got to do this together. Don't ask questions when you're really making a statement. Make the statement. Period is one of the most powerful forms of punctuation. So we tend to like end questions in a lilt. We tend to imply that it's a request, and it's not. And it can become toxic very fast because people don't know what to do back. It's confusing, it's out of alignment, there's no integrity behind it if it's done from a place of malice, which sometimes can happen, and we all know what that feels like. But do some research yourself on assertive question asking, motivational interviewing. There are resources that you can maybe get for yourself to purge yourself of this habit if you happen to have that habit. An action item for you, ban how was your day in your family system. It's a good way of practicing it. My poor kids, because we don't really ask how was your day. We ask very specific questions. And sometimes it can be challenging because people are busy, but it is kind of lazy when you just ask, how was your day? Challenge yourself for 7 days to not ask it. Ban it. It's no-fly zone in the family for 7 days. And you can cheat and get like little lists of questions, and you can buy little games online. You can do research. There's blog posts that will give you some ideas. You can steal this slide. I don't care. But practice it. Okay, real quick. Pick a word of the year that becomes your intention setting word. I think that if we had a lot of time to share anecdotes around this, I guarantee somebody's done it. I've been doing this for years, and it seems to have kind of caught on. There's even a little company now where you can buy a bracelet with the word inscribed on this little disc. So I missed my entrepreneurial chance, I guess, with that. But be thinking about a word of the year. I've been doing it for years. That word helps center behaviors. You can pick it generally enough that it can be a work word or a personal life word, or maybe an umbrella word that captures both. So words that I've used over the years have been dare, adventure, invest, refine, recalibrate. And I use those to center some things and maybe challenge myself to do some stuff that I wouldn't normally do. The year my word was dare is when I opened my own practice and did some other things in my personal life that were big and scary. So pick a word for the year. Finally, I want you to be thinking about who the toughest person is that you know. Who is the toughest person that you know? What did they do? And what did they believe that made them so tough? You know, I was at a strategic planning thing for my school district actually the other night, and I was a participant as a parent in the community, and I was talking to somebody, and people had had a lot of stuff up on the board about grit and toughness, and it was interesting. And the conversation was that it's either there or it's not. Like someone either has it or they cultivate it because of like trauma or bad things in their life, and you can't teach it. And I kind of quietly said, well, actually, this isn't the time or place to have that conversation, but you can teach it. Toughness is something that is a cultivated set of habits. And the list that I'm going to go through, we don't have time. I'm going to talk about one specifically, but it is something you can learn. And this is how I define toughness. It's learning to tolerate psychological uncomfortableness. And, you know, it is the cultural conversation happening with millennials and now Gen Zers. This lack of frustration tolerance, this struggling with tolerating the psychological uncomfortableness that can happen when you do something public and don't do it well, that to not be liked, like that's psychologically uncomfortable. And so toughness is learning to tolerate that. Now there are defense mechanisms that, you know, Freud kind of coined a lot of these phrases, and psychologists certainly talk about all of these. We think about defense mechanisms as being bad, but they actually can be adaptive when deployed employed with some thoughtfulness. So don't think about the things that you may do as unhealthy. You know, it's interesting. People will say, well, I compartmentalize, and so that must be, you know, a moral failing. No, it's actually a mechanism that helps you be adaptive when you're doing it with some intention and thoughtfulness. So keep that in mind. So I want to talk about common denominator versus blind spot. So there, I have 11 mental toughness habits, and this is the one I want to talk about real briefly. Standing in the hall of mirrors. That's really what this is about. If the same thing keeps showing up over and over again, then you have to get still and ask yourself what you are getting out of it. If it's working for a certain kind of boss, if it's a dating relationship, if it's a certain kind of friendship, that if the thing keeps happening, you've got to examine what's going on. And it isn't about like blame. It's looking at how you may be complicit in a dynamic. It's looking at ownership. Some folks can't do this, but if you are intentional about it, this can be a game changer in your professional life. So those are some questions you can ask yourself to kind of get at this. You know, what am I ignoring? What am I accusing people of on a routine basis? What do I hide from other people? What do I make a lot of effort? One of my favorite questions, what do I demonstrate when I feel I have not been heard? That'll tell you a lot about yourself and how your team responds to you and how you navigate the politics and the C-suite. So in conclusion, I want to offer this thought. Emotions are data, not direction. Now, that little feeling wheel, I give that to people a lot, and I have them track their mood life. You can use this. You can find that on the web. Just Google wheel of feelings and print it out and track your emotional life. What I found is that when you're paying attention and you ban certain words, like like guilt. I always say, okay, guilt's the top of the grab bag. We're going to ban that. We have to say something else. The more accurate you get, you actually can do something about it. Emotions are data, not direction, because when emotions drive the train, it tends to be a cluster. You know what? Emotions are precious. They are what make us human. They are a piece of how we are differentiated from primates, but they cannot drive the train. They can inform the direction that you go, but they are not to be the thing that you act out of. And I believe that everybody can learn how to behave in spite of how they feel. So this is sort of a tongue-in-cheek slide here to make you
Melissa, this is Andrea. I'm coming back on to let you know that I think something happened to the video feed. So if you can hear me, we stopped being able to hear you. Maybe you're having some technical difficulties, so we'll give you a moment to get back online. Well, it looks like we may have lost our speaker. Maybe there was technical difficulties, and so I'll challenge you to ask what emotion you're feeling on the emotion wheel right now and not let it drive your train. Let me move forward then and just share the rest of our presentation so that we can introduce you to what's going to be happening next. We are going to be focused on our next call, which won't be until July. We're going to have a very good presentation from here we go, share my screen, from Debbie Lundberg. So the Korn Ferry study also found out that women who are high potential women or leaders, those CEOs, were creating workplace culture. So unfortunately, I think we lost Dr. Melissa completely. I'm going to ask her to follow up and send us her presentation if that's possible. And then hold your calendars then for July 17th. And we're going to hear Debbie Lundberg talk to us about responding, not reacting to disappointment, criticism, or rejection. And that goes into the topic of how we create a workplace culture. So if you are following us on LinkedIn, we want to show you how that is growing. It's a growing community. It's one of the things that you can get out of your membership. We have content, we have information on the regional and the national events that will be there. And so please make sure that you visit our LinkedIn page and that you even share these LinkedIn posts with your community, with your organization, and even friends and family. If you weren't a member today and you logged on with somebody as a guest, or if you would like to present this to other people so that they could join our organization, we have a great text to join feature now. So that's the last thing I'll leave you with. It's text to join, and it's 31996. You text WiPN to 31996. So thank you all for your time today. Since we lost our panelists, we're not going to have a question and answer session. If you have any other questions, you can submit them on the registration link that came to your inbox as you registered. And as always, thank you again for being a Women in Pensions member, and we hope that you really enjoyed your topic today, taking time for yourself to do personal development. Have a great day.